What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and before we get into anything today, I do want to let you know that we are going to be live on this channel tomorrow night, Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a little bit earlier than normal because it's the last game of the season. If you have not been yet, like I just said, it's the last chance you guys have to come by one of these live watch parties of a game. They are a ton of fun. Plus, we're going to have a couple of pretty cool announcements during this live stream as well, and I promise you won't want to miss it. So again, that is tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Anyways, as we start to wrap up this season here, we're going to start moving into what the Red Sox can do to improve this offseason. And what we've really been focusing on these last couple of videos is the starting pitching, right? We made a video on Carlos Rodon, we made a video on Waka versus Evaldi, and today we're going to continue that trend because starting pitching this offseason is going to be super interesting. And today we are talking about Chris Bassitt. We're going to be talking about whether or not Chris Bassitt will be a good fit for this Red Sox team, and we're going to talk about what it would take for the Red Sox to get Chris Bassitt here. And on top of that, we're going to talk about whether or not I think that the Red Sox will try and sign Chris Bassitt. I want your guys' opinion as well. So listen to the video, watch the video, whatever, and then at the end of it, let me know what you guys would do. But before we get into that, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps out a ton, would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Chris Bassitt is probably a fan favorite to sign this offseason. I've seen his name brought up by a ton of people. Even Alex Spear of the Boston Globe on the Nesson broadcast last night mentioned the Red Sox going after Chris Bassitt. So let's take a look at whether or not he'd be a good fit. And the first thing, like I said with Rodon, that I look at when I'm looking at whether or not a player will be a good fit for the Red Sox is how they handle a big market. For the most part, guys who have spent a lot of their career in Oakland, that's a concern, right? Oakland is an extremely small market. There's not a ton of pressure on these guys, and they're just sort of playing to either get traded or sign big money contracts in free agency outside of Oakland. In the case of Chris Bassitt specifically, though, that shouldn't be an issue because in 2022, Chris Bassitt played the entire year with the New York Mets, and he did it really well. He was able to handle the media and the scrutiny that comes with playing in one of the biggest markets in all of baseball with the New York Mets, and he performed at a pretty decent level. When I'm looking at whether or not a player can handle a big market team, obviously a guy playing for the New York Mets should be able to handle what goes on in Boston, the pressures that come with it. Now, for statistics in 2022, they were pretty decent. In 2022, with the New York Mets, Chris Bassitt had an ERA of 3.42, a FIP of 3.65, so he's not getting lucky out there. He has a 1.145 WHIP and a 1.13 ERA plus, making him about 13% more productive than the average pitcher in baseball. And those top line statistics are fantastic, but sometimes top line statistics can be skewed a little bit, and something that really gets me excited for Chris Bassitt are his per nines, because if you take a look at his per nines, starting with his home runs per nine, he's sitting at just 0.9, meaning he gives up about one home run every 10 innings. That's on average in the MLB every 2 starts. That's a fantastic number in terms of giving up home runs. His walks per nine are sitting at just 2.4, which is below the average walk rate in baseball, meaning that he is on average walking less people than the average pitcher in baseball right now. And on top of that, his strikeouts per nine are at 8.3, which again are above the average strikeout per nine in baseball, meaning that he's striking out more players in baseball. So while his top line statistics are great, the things that really get me excited about Chris Bassitt are his per nines, because it shows that he's legitimately being a productive pitcher. Sometimes an ERA can be skewed a little bit, sometimes a FIP can be slightly skewed. ERA plus is kind of hard to be skewed, but either way, right, the fact that his statistics outside of just the main statistics are still good is a very good sign. Now, there are some concerns with Chris Bassitt, and like most starting pitchers, it has to do with injuries. In 2016, Chris Bassitt had to get Tommy John surgery, which kept him out of most of 2016 and 2017. And I think we can all remember the horrific injury that he suffered in 2021, where he was hit in the head with a line drive at over 100 miles an hour that he had to leave the game on a stretcher because of. And he was out for a while because of that. But one thing that I love about Chris Bassitt, and even though he has had a couple of major injuries, is his ability to bounce back. After getting hit in the head with a 100+ mile an hour line drive, Chris Bassitt came back later that season and still ended the 2021 season with 27 starts. That to me shows that this dude is a workhorse. He's got crazy work ethic and just wants to be on the field and help his team win, which is a wildly important characteristic for a guy playing on this Red Sox team, because we've seen this year just how important consistency is. is. This starting pitching staff has not been consistent at all this year. They have one of the highest ERAs in all of baseball, and a lot of that can be attributed to injuries, right? Evaldi injured. We're not going to go through the list. Everyone knows the injuries that the Red Sox have had. The fact that Chris Bassitt has been able to rebound from these horrific injuries and still perform at a pretty high level is wildly impressive. This year alone, he had 30 starts. He'll probably have one more before the season ends. So you're looking at a guy who averages in the last 2 years about 28 starts. The only person who would have had more starts on this Red Sox team this year is Nick Pivetta. That to me breeds consistency. So if you take a look at all the metrics, right, whether or not he can perform in a big market, his actual statistics, the deeper statistics, right, his injury history, to me, it seems like he would be a perfect fit in Boston for the 2 spot in this rotation. We talked about how Evaldi or Waka probably aren't coming back this year. That leaves that hole in this rotation, and I think Chris Bassitt would be the perfect guy to fill it. So the question now becomes how and if the Red Sox will be able to get him to this team. Well, the first thing that's going to need to happen is either Chris or the Mets are going to need to opt out of his current contract. In 2021, going into 2022, Chris signed a contract that was worth $8.8 million in 2022, and they had a mutual option for $19 million in 2023 with a $150,000 buyout. So there are 2 ways that you can look at this from Chris's perspective. And it's a lot more interesting than looking at it from Carlos Rodon's perspective that we had talked about in the last video. The first is that Chris kind of looks at this like, hey, I like playing in New York. I pitched really well this year. $19 million isn't exactly chump change to play for. And we kind of all know what Steve Cohen does for the players that play well. He goes out and he spends money. He's not afraid to spend money. So if I stay here, I take this $19 million option. I pitched well in 2023. Maybe I can secure myself a longer term contract. The other way to look at this is Chris says, hey, I want the security of being with a team for a while, whether that means 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is. I'm tired of having to play for these shorter contracts and not make the money that I want to make. So I'm going to opt out and see what I can get in free agency. And that is where the Red Sox need to shine, right? If I'm the Boston Red Sox, there's no reason why if Chris Bassitt or the Mets opt out of their contract that they shouldn't go after Chris Bassitt. Now, a contract with the Boston Red Sox should look something like this. I would go 5 years, $100 million, which is about $20 million a year for Chris Bassitt. It's beating his current average annual value if you were to opt in. And on top of that, it gives you the longevity and the security of having a contract for a while. For the Red Sox side of it, I would also put in a 3rd-year mutual option, right? Just like the one that we're talking about now, and a player or team option after year 4. What this does is it gives you flexibility, right? You're not locked in fully to those 5 years. If you pay him $20 million a year and for the first 3 years, he's not exactly what you wanted, you've got that option to buy him out and release him back into free agency. If he does do well, you have that option to use the entire 5 years, and options are fantastic when you're talking about starting pitching, right? Starting pitching can be so volatile. If a starting pitcher gets hurt, they may never come back and be the same player that we saw in the past. So having those options in those contracts are really important to this Red Sox team. And on top of that, it gives Chris exactly what he would want if he were to opt out. Longevity, even if he doesn't get that mutual option after the 3rd year, he still has 3 years with a team, making more money than he's making now. And that to me makes a ton of sense. But really this boils down to whether or not he'll actually even hit free agency. And that's something we're going to have to wait and see. If you are the GM of the Boston Red Sox, if you were the chief baseball operator behind Bloom, what are you doing? Are you going after Chris Bassitt? Are you not going after Chris Bassitt? Let me know all your thoughts on this down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button. Like I said at the beginning, if you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Plus, you made it to the end here, you might as well hit that button. Also, make sure you guys hit the like button as well. It helps these videos out a ton, would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you tomorrow night for the last live watch party of the year at 4 p.m. Eastern time and in the red seat.